This is not Nom Smokey. There are rules. How you doing, everybody? I am here for a very, very fantastically special episode 7 of the Good Talk podcast. I have, of course, my great friend Chris Rubb here with me.
Good evening, everybody.
And our special guest tonight is the one, the only, Terry Allen, a.k.a. Uncle Turdman, armchair philosopher extraordinaire. How are you doing, Turdman?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're fucking awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the closest Turdman has ever been to the internet.
That's right.
Mere feet away now.
You are. The internet is all around you right now at this moment.
On it in presence.
Well, when Jonah asked me if I wanted to do a podcast, I asked him how I broke it and why do I need a cast?
Yeah, and we get that question a lot out there, actually, when I meet people who have never heard of a podcast before. So I think Turdman is phenomenal, and we are going to fucking drain his silly head and fill the swimming pool of his skull with a powerful Good Talk 5. So we're going to ease into this one, Uncle Turdman. The Good Talk 5, real quickly, there's no third options. If you try for a third option in the Good Talk 5...
We're just going to shut it down.
Shut it down. Okay?
Pull the plug.
Pull the plug. You get one or the other. All right,
The only way you can ruin this.
The only way you can ruin it is to try for a third option in these situations.
Oh,
No pressure.
You guys sound like you're challenging me or something.
Okay, so first question, and for some folks this is going to be easier than others, but I'm going to launch it at you. Beaches or forests?
Forest.
And what puts you in the forest? Like why the forest?
Well, if you ever seen me in a swimsuit at the beach, you'd know why.
Well, not everybody who hangs out at the beach is
Well,
wearing, as you know.
30 years ago, I'd have said the beach.
Okay, so that's one that changes over time.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm definitely forests, mountains myself. I feel connected to that energy far more. I love beaches. I've had a couple fun beach experiences. They were fantastic. Did some body surfing, and it all went really, really well. But I want to be out there amongst the greenery. Yeah. Rob, how do you feel?
I'm on board 100%. I don't like deep water. I'm very uncomfortable at the beach or in the ocean. From a distance or in a picture, the beach is fine. But the forest and the mountains, those are things that I'm comfortably engaging in. So I'm gonna have to go forest as well.
And I consider myself an aquatic being. I think I can achieve my passion for water in the realm of the forest as well. I could easily find a wonderful forest with some awesome fucking lake.
And if I can see the bottom, I'm pretty okay. It's when I can't see the bottom that I tend to get filled with that.
Oh yeah, that's when the sea monsters
Jaws
are coming
mentality, and I can't do her.
A river bank wouldn't be a beach, would it?
No, it wouldn't be a beach, but I can still get my water fix.
I can dig a river.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good one, folks. Let us know out there on Twitter at the Good Talk 5. What do you like? Beaches, forests? Sounds like we're all forest people here.
No third options again.
I have another one for you here. I'm gonna load up question number 2. Wonder or certainty?
Certainty.
That's a damn fine question.
Yeah.
Certainty would have to be mine. I don't like wondering. I get obsessed.
Sometimes obsession leads to... I mean, it can lead down any tunnel you want it.
Right.
But it's oftentimes obsession...
All certainty was once wonder. Right?
Right. I would speculate so.
Yeah.
You have to ask the question before you answer it, so...
Indeed.
The answer might come automatically, but at least for a fraction of a second, it was wonder. You had to ask yourself.
So in that question, you could say both.
You may say both, but I think, does certainty prevail without wonder? Certainty is the finality of wonder, right? The two kind of share a symbiosis.
Sure.
But you got to pick one though. Like
what kind of gratifying feeling to you wonder about something for so long and all of a sudden you're certain. Now, do you feel better wondering Or do you feel better being certain?
I feel better wondering. I guess when I think of wonder, I think of, exploding colorful skies in my mind and the possibility of the universe and my consciousness, and we're not certain about any of that.
Yeah, in that regard, every answer comes with a dozen questions.
Right.
So to wonder is the eternal condition. You're always going to be wondering about something. Coming up with anything that's certain is fleeting at best.
At best.
Yeah.
And certainty sort of preaches a finality. And I think
Right.
certainty...
I'm not entirely sure that exists.
Right. Well, the problem is that people, I think, do think it exists. And you have people
right.
with a certainty who are then entrenched
I
in
find that dangerous.
a certain line of thinking and have an unwillingness to engage in new ideas.
Extremely dangerous people.
Extremely dangerous.
Extremely dangerous people.
Certainty does it lead to absolutism?
Yes.
So
Yes.
certainty is bad.
Invariably
Nah.
it does.
If you're going down the road and you need a bathroom, you're certain you need to pull over. And if you don't, you are absolutely
He just
gonna
wrecked us.
You are going to have something bad happen to you.
He just wrecked everything
You know?
we laid forth. I am humbled.
Then everybody's going to be wondering why you're running to the shitter holding your pants.
And they'll be certain in a moment when they find out.
Or you're about alongside the road with all your car doors open on one side, sitting between them, looking under the seat for something that you're going to need eventually.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
So
We just got put in our place.
we really did. That was fucking fun.
That was a good one.
Wonder or certainty, and I'm always wondering. So that's the side that I land
It's
on.
kinda like
But I have
only-
just been shown the value of
Oh
certainty.
God, I know it's powerful.
It's kind of like only one person can keep a secret.
Yeah.
'Cause once you tell somebody, "Hey, I got a secret I need to tell you,"
Yeah, secret's out.
it's done.
Yeah,
That's it.
Two people can't have the same secret.
not really.
Not
for long.
In some ways, secret is an individual thing.
Yeah.
Because that's a true secret. If you're gonna have layers of secrets, a true secret is just something. It doesn't have to be dark. It's
No.
not always dark or sinister, but it's some weird thing or whatever.
It's
that
still
you
the one that
have
you
never
dare
told
not
anybody.
share.
That's a secret.
It's still the one that you dare not
I think
share.
the way you have to distinguish a secret is like that's only something one person can have. Now, if you think 2 or 3 people know this secret, it's
Right.
not a secret. It's what you would probably say is classified information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
There's
becomes a
only-
shared story
yeah,
now.
You're privy to it.
Sure. But it's no longer the true definition of that secret. That secret is something that has not been let out the bag. It exists in one person.
Yeah. It's only a part of one reality.
Sure. I'll buy that.
In that regard,
I'll buy that.
You're holding on to that secret with your consciousness, and it exists only there.
Right.
And you know yourself, you will never tell anybody else.
Yeah.
Would you do you think if you had that one crazy secret, say, I don't know, you were the one who left some, you stung some fucking serial killer before anybody else got him, you dextered him, and you kept that to yourself forever. You just did it the one time.
Right.
Just the one time.
Yeah, you swear
could
you'll
do
never
it.
do it again.
You'll never do it again. And you'll never tell anybody. Would you like, as you were going out the other side, would you finally explode with that secret all over everybody, like some sort of fucking,
Like on your deathbed type thing?
Yeah.
I find deathbed confessions have got to be some of the more, I don't know, fascinating, at least the idea of it.
What about the stupidity secrets?
What are the stupidity secrets?
Well, let's say you go down the road and you open up a candy bar and throw it out the window and keep the wrapper.
No, those
man, I am chocked full of those.
you gotta share those.
Well,
That's that laugh has to be projected out there. That's fucking hilarious. That reminds me, of course, I'll give any throwback to the Lebowski that I can, but when he's smoking the fucking roach and he's drinking the beer and he goes to flick the roach out the window and it hits the window, lands in his lap. I mean,
Right.
You got to share that. Those are great moments.
Those are hard to share, man.
Well, we can go back to the highway and say you don't make it.
Yeah. How many people are you going to be telling about that?
Yeah, that's definitely would be one for the ages.
I'm
You'd
not
share
sure
it
the
with
grandkids need to know about
That'd
that.
be a fucking cute Instagram
Well,
photo.
I think that way, the people you did tell would have to. You would have to commit them to your classification, classified information.
You got to have the vault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta have somebody with a vault.
You'd better have some dirt on them too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's dirty, Rob.
Well, what else
like,
keeps them quiet?
If I'm telling you something dirty,
The
then
secret.
I need some dirt on you. Fucking. And that, my folks, is why I say a piece of wisdom that was imparted to me at a very young age. I've maintained it for a long time. One of those clips you remember from when you were like 15, but I once heard this phrase and I've kept it. Secrets are the truths people lie about.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking interesting. I've always sort of pondered that phrase, what it means, what it can mean. And it stuck with me. 20 plus years. That is just one of the... I'm not one of those people that can remember every phrase from a book I read. I can remember key components and share the story and the themes with you, but I've never been one to be able to precisely whip out these awesome quotes from every movie or book that I have read. However, that's one that has stuck with me through the ages. Let's hammer Turdman Soul with the third question. Rub, do you got any loaded up tonight, or am I launching all these?
I just woke up from my power nap. I've prepared nothing.
Rub power
I'm
napped.
contributing nothing to this conversation thus far.
Rub power napped leading into this. I've really lasered a few in here. Infrared vision or sonar?
Oh, that's a good one too.
Infrared vision.
You're going infrared all the way?
Oh, yeah. You don't need sonar. You got infrared.
Why?
Well, why would you? Sonar is underwater, isn't it? I mean,
Well, sonar you could... No, it's not underwater. Bats use it. Echolocation is a worthy thing.
It would be more
radar.
efficient under
that's
the water.
radar. Sonar and radar.
Sonar uses sound waves. Radar uses electromagnetic waves in the same direction. But echolocation would still work in air. It's just more efficient in water.
Well, you see blind people walking down up against a building.
Bats use sonar.
Click.
Of course.
Making clicking.
That's the popular one. So you think if...
Snakes use essentially thermal imaging, which is electromagnetic in nature.
Yeah. And then their tongue.
I think in a way would like sonar, so that's just that you're sending like an echo wave of imagery around like your radius. This is not probably not going to be an acoustic. There you go.
Yes.
Perfect. But yeah, I think the infrared would probably be more valuable.
Right. Sonar itself too is active in nature, so you have to actually send out that ping in order for it to return to you. Thermal imaging is the other one is the thermal imaging. Infrared. That's passive in nature. You're only receiving what is being projected by heat, which is essentially infrared.
Okay.
So again, sonar you're more involved in. You have to actually send that ping out in order for it to return.
Yeah, I think infrared would definitely work better for me in that case.
I got a question for you.
What do you got?
What would you do if this is back on the secret thing? If you had a secret that you weren't supposed to know and only one other person knew it, and that person didn't want anybody to know, and you actually knew that secret.
Oh, I would have to probably stab them with a sword through the heart.
I don't see any other option.
There's no other option.
They've got to die.
They have to die. That's it.
You just like hold out your hand and say, "Pay me." Guess what I know?
I don't know if blackmail's my style. I don't see myself.
Murder is.
Yeah.
Wow.
How about let's just blackmail him a little and then kill him?
Well, then I'm really getting to scumbag villain status, and maybe that dark decisions.
We're gonna need a layer.
I would think it would depend on the secret and the person.
Yeah, the implications of giving it up versus the implications of keeping it. What does it entail?
Yeah, there's some serious variables there.
Right. Like if I found out Tyrion didn't brush his teeth tonight, like I'm not gonna, he's not gonna need to die.
No, not at that point.
No,
not for that one.
I just throw in my false teeth and say, "Here, you can borrow these." You don't. Who needs a toothbrush?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you're pretty much fucking covered, right? All right, let's shatter this. That's 4, right? Good
I think
time.
that was
4. Is that 4? Who's keeping count? I think that's 4.
It's our show. It's 4.
It is our damn show, and I'm gonna close it off with a banger on number 5 here. Providence or prominence? Of course, providence as being defined by your ability, preparation, prudence, foresight, forethought. Trust in sort of divine providence essentially as well. Another implication there, or of course prominence. The star. You are in the light. You.
Is that like trusting in yourself overall, or trusting in external divine?
I think it could mean that you're prominent in your field.
Could be prominent in your field.
Sure, yeah.
It could be.
I think prominent because before you have to have one before you could have the other. I think they kind of go hand in hand.
Okay. Rub, I mean, I see you turning the gears over there.
I think you just broke the rub, if I'm honest.
Stop getting broken. I know you're fucking tiny and it comes easily with your dumb tiny head.
Fragile.
Very fragile. If you didn't know, Uncle, we've established a secret war, and you've probably been a part of it for years.
I'm losing.
It's the big head people versus the tiny head people. It came through late in the 40s.
My head is by no means tiny, but it's also not giant, so I've been lumped in with the tiny heads.
These are the tiny heads. There's no middle ground.
Posterity.
Yeah, and it's the big heads versus the tiny heads, and
although in the grand spectrum of head sizes, I probably do lean towards the larger, but I'm amongst giants, so
I would think, like, look at some of the great tiny headed people out there. Like one of your idols, Terrence McKenna. He had a pretty small head.
Yeah, he kind of did. He just had the fro in order to.
But really, if you took away that fro,
I feel like he probably did have a bit of a tiny head.
No,
towards the end there, when he had really, really short hair. So yeah.
Are you talking physically large head?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Physically large head. Yeah, you're in the big head clan. Don't even worry about it. You're big giant fucking. Turdman is a redhead, so he is without a soul.
Right. A day walker, if you will.
Yeah.
A day walker. Turdman, the day walker. Turdman's lived a pretty fucking cool life. He was a seismographer in what was that, like the 70s?
The late 70s and into the 80s.
And so that was when you were really young. Now, Rub, when I say he was a seismographer,
right.
Do you know kind of like what that entails or what that means?
Yeah.
Okay. So
we called ourselves doodle buggers.
Probably worked for USGS or something like that.
Doodle buggers.
Yeah.
I don't know. He said that
dinosaur hunters.
Like what a fascinating
oil exploration
kind of job that was. Yeah, it was, and that's what it was. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about that. Share us a fucking seismographing story. Like what?
Well,
didn't they fly you guys up in helicopters and you drop dynamite into places? And
well, they flew us up and then they long lined our equipment and our dynamite into us, and we'd set the charges and lay the equipment and have fun up there all day blowing stuff up.
That would be so much fun.
What a fucking gnarly job!
And it was the way they taught us to do these what we called shots. Is it would just be like a big concussion hitting the ground. It really would just blow up a little dirt, and there was a few survey stakes to pick up and a little bit of survey flagging after we were done. And
get closer to your mic.
It didn't leave a big imprint on the land or anything. And I mean, it was really fun. You'd
what areas of the country were you doing that in?
We was right outside of Yellowstone, and then we did it over in Idaho, right south of Jackson Hole, basically up and down the Rockies. the east slope mainly, not too deep into them.
And do you know, like, did your efforts lead to anything of significance, or were you guys just a bunch of hippies smoking doobies, flying helicopters, and blowing shit up?
I think it'd be a little bit of both.
We were doing that too, yeah. That was pretty much one of the job requirements, I think, then, is to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're living a little bit on the wild side, right? I mean, everybody was young.
Well, we worked 7 days a week.
Probably had like a
weather permitting,
grizzled Vietnam helicopter vet as your pilot. Seriously, right?
We did have some of that. Yeah, we had a few of those. They were some hard partying guys. I mean, sometimes you'd sit and drink with them till the bar closed, and then 7 o'clock they'd be sitting there with their aviators on, their helicopter going.
And they're flying like what 6, 8 of you guys up there?
Well, they had several different types of helicopters. Some would only hold like 4 of us. They had a Llama, a Alouette, Jet Ranger, the Bell Jet Rangers, the Hueys. There were several different kind.
And so, I mean, in that little era of your life, like, you logged a good chunk of time in helicopters.
Oh, yeah, for 4 years, every day, weather permitting.
Fuck, for fun,
Dude,
man.
that sounds like so much fun.
Right? And I've still yet to be in a helicopter.
It was very taxing on you. I mean, there were sometimes that,
I guess it's easy for us to glorify it.
You've seen some people that have
everything
partied
turns
hard,
into a
and
job.
then just the next day here they come, like the Walking Dead, ready to go to work.
Everything turns into a job eventually.
And then pretty soon, after the dust clears and the clouds, kind of fade, you're right back into the groove. There was a lot of times where we would just sit idle all day. I'm talking 15 hours a day, just sitting there waiting for them to
out on like a mountainside or in a desert, or
both. Just depending on where we were, because we did travel pretty much the whole country. I never did make it into the swamps, but
when you were doing that, now was it all dudes, or you were probably having like hippie sex out there, hippie seismographer sex for sure. Hippie pussy.
Well, I couldn't honestly say that and let
Seismogenic.
people tell me that I got paid while I was doing that, because I was supposed to be doing
I can
something
neither
else.
confirm nor deny the
your
presence of
suspicions.
hippie sex in
I
the
don't
bush.
think they're going to come and take my paycheck away because I was humping out on the mountainside, but
No, that's
you never know.
dude. Now, so I imagine now that technology must be better. We can't be sending people out there doing the same way. Is that still how we do it?
It's
or?
still very
Pretty much
similar.
still do
Real
it
very
that
similar.
way.
Yeah.
It is.
Is that the best way?
It's
got
very very good.
They sight in wells. It's called 3D.
Yep.
Yeah.
Our way of interpreting the data is better now. But our way of acquiring the data is still
their
very much
lateral
the same.
drilling. They want to know what kind of stuff they're going to be drilling through, and with the 3D technology now, they can just pretty much tell where they're going to go.
See, when they set off that charge, that sends again. This is like sonar, where basically you're setting that charge off, and it's going to echo through different substrate. It's going to start off through the dirt, rock, whatever, and on the echo back.
Yeah,
you have listening stations that are going to listen
they
for
have
that
what
bang.
they call geophones.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's a really sensitive spring on the bottom and one on the top, and it's got like a little copper wrap around it.
There you go. Stay close to the mic.
And once that, it just takes. I mean, wind can even vibrate
Sure.
these things. So the more energy that thing gets, it determines what kind of formation that energy is traveling through.
Yep.
Like rock, sand, water, oil.
Yep. They still use very similar technique.
Well, it's the same, basically the same thing they used to monitor for earthquakes.
Yep.
Yeah, of course, seismology. I mean,
the listening stations would be
the things that
almost
they
the same.
use are called geophones.
Yep.
And that's basically what they use for.
you got to keep in.
That's basically what they use for earthquakes.
And I mean, with those, I thought that was just like a tripod thing that you set out in the desert somewhere, and it just kind of. I mean, that's part of it, isn't it? Or
no. You'll run a whole mile, sometimes 2 miles worth of equipment out. That's all pretty much connected together with what they call a recorder in the center that's operated by the observer. And like every 200-300 feet, they'll set up a charge, and it kind of just runs down that line. You know,
once you interpret all that data, you come up with a picture of what the substrate of the Earth looks like.
Okay, so you can see like the geology of the Earth at that point.
Once you interpret it, yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of my next question. Obviously, this was done for oil exploration, but there was a yield of a lot of other valuable information.
Oh, for sure.
And that information is used and shared and utilized in other ways.
Well, I don't know if they share that information with anybody.
Yeah, when it's done by like the USGS, the Geological Survey, then now that's for science. When it's done for oil companies, that's proprietary.
Yeah, that's happened to me a couple different times as we went back over the same area for different clients.
Oh, wow.
That's all proprietary.
Okay, so you guys are like this, like a mercenary outfit or what? Like,
well, we just kind of
took it.
Guns for hire.
It sounds like a good 4-year run.
I really think we were probably the most professional and extreme packers.
Okay.
That you would ever come across.
You would say, like, at that time, your crew was known or recognized, or what?
Oh, well, yeah.
Within your field at that point.
Well, yeah, we worked for a company called Pac West, and our crew designation was S13. And we broke a lot of their standing records for like mileage, and production and stuff like that.
Fuck yeah,
that'd be fun, man.
For
a while.
It was
for a while.
For a while.
Yeah, for like like you said, a good 4-year stint. And
well, you're in a different town every month.
Yeah, I mean that's
different
obviously
part of the country. Sometimes you're working out of a truck, and a lot of times you're out of helicopter, and sometimes you're out of both.
It's a good adventure.
Anything in the water?
Is there any? They did that, but I never got into that. I had worked with some people that had actually done it. In
like scuba?
swamps.
Do they scuba or
no? They did it out of boats, and it was all pressurized air.
The logistics of it would be a little different.
They don't always use explosives. They have these big trucks that have the pads that come down and shake the ground. They're called bibops.
Oh,
that's closer to what they use these days for oil exploration.
Okay.
And they'll just line them all up.
You'll see those still to this day out in Western North Dakota.
And they'll synchronize them, and they'll just blah, 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 blah. They'll go right down. There'll be like 6 trucks, and they all are in sync.
You'll still see them out operating vibrating trucks like that out in Western North Dakota for oil exploration.
So you guys got some Yellowstone time in during that era.
Yeah.
And I know you're
a lot of Yellowstone Park in that time.
And you're originally from the Pacific Northwest area. So a lot of forest time coming up in your sort of formulative earlier years. And I know how much you fucking love conspiracy theories, Turdman.
All right.
So like, what's your take on Bigfoot?
Well, I don't think they're
Sasquatch
conspiracy about him. He's real.
Until there is pure physical ultimate evidence, I beg to differ with you.
I'm on the fence with Bigfoot.
Okay,
I'm on the fence.
But let's hear about it. No, let's fucking jam on it.
I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Here's something I got to say, and it might make me sound like crazy ass, but I believe in Bigfoot. I believe in aliens, and I believe in ghosts. Okay, I believe in all three.
Fine by me.
You're allowed to do those things.
And there's a hell of a lot more out there that I'm not even aware of.
For sure.
This planet here, I mean,
truth is stranger than fiction. Listen, they just fucking discovered a brand new species of dolphin. In the last year, a brand new species of dolphin was discovered by National Geographic when they were filming Planet Earth 2.
Right about that.
They found a dolphin that is a river dolphin that swims in the deep, deep fucking infested jungles in South America. It's totally blind, and it swims through the mud, and that's amazing. Look how long we've been here, and we just discovered that.
It was pink?
Yep. No, it was like a gray. Like they're super hard to see because the water is so murky. I mean, it's incredible.
Its underside does have a bit of a pink tinge to it.
And so when we don't yet know and can't yet identify every identifiable species on this planet that we right there, and then who is anyone to say this isn't real, ghosts aren't real,
or that it can't possibly be.
Well, if you have experiences and then you question your own sanity. Like I was out in the woods, Washington, one time in a place called Matlock. It's a little bit west of Shelton, if anybody knows where that's at. And we were picking chanterelle mushrooms. And I
Now,
smelled something.
are those psychedelic or what?
No, they're
okay.
gourmet.
Oh, like morels.
Well, we actually got paid for that too,
Sure.
so it was cool. Anyway, we smell something that's really rotten, like it's dead.
How
right?
far in the forest are you?
Well, we were right up on the Olympic Peninsula in the middle of the Olympic mountain range. So we're in dead center of Sasquatchville all the way. And I mean, we hadn't even really talked about this Sasquatch thing at all. And I mean, I guess at that point I really never had an opinion about it.
Mm-hmm.
Until, like I said,
This was the trigger.
we smelt this thing as this was like rotten. I thought for sure I was going to come across a dead elk or a dead deer or something.
Sure.
And instead, I come across this big old huge footprint in the moss. While I'm standing there, the smell kind of dissipates and goes away.
Huge. How big?
Well, I'd say 14, 18 inches in between that. You know,
Just one.
I mean,
it
it
was a singular footprint.
well,
or?
the footprint that I seen was so defined. I mean, my jaw was open and I was staring at it.
And pardon me for asking you to be detailed because I know this is a long time ago, but I want to try to create the best image I can.
Well,
for
it was
anybody
just
listening.
well, if you ever been out in the forests in Washington on the Olympic Peninsula, especially, there are some areas in there that no matter how blue the sky is that day, it's still dark. Where you're at.
It's fucking scary. That gives me the goosebumps
And
a little
Just
bit.
due to the
And
density
it's-
of the canopy.
Yeah, and the moss that hangs, and the area that we were in was nothing but moss. I mean, for a good 50 yards in every direction. Every tree was covered. The whole floor of the
Sounds
forest
beautiful.
was covered with this long,
Eerie,
stringy,
but
I think it was
beautiful.
called Spanish moss. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no,
That
no
sounds
need to be
right.
specific.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
And it was just one big footprint that had caught my eye, and I mean,
Along with the stench.
the stench dissipated while I was looking at this footprint. I mean, I swore I was on top of it, because it was such a powerful odor. And then I find this thing that is such a well-defined footprint. And me and 4 other people sat there and just kind of stared at it with our mouths open.
And
So-
wonder, like
Yeah.
jaw dropped. Like, was the forest quiet? Like, was
Dead quiet.
dead
quiet.
fucking quiet all around.
Well, see, you could run across that moss and you wouldn't make a sound.
Yeah, it's gonna absorb anything.
Sure.
Because I mean, what had happened
And
is
to think if you're barefoot on top
well,
of that.
see, underneath that moss was all
fleet-footed.
that dead forest, the old growth, and the moss had covered it up. So, very few twigs, maybe a few old rotten logs, but everything had been incorporated into the moss. It
Pretty
probably
soft.
just turned it into whatever it turns it into. The moss consumed it, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And you could walk through that, and I mean literally jump up in the air and land on your back in that moss and not get hurt. In some spots it was a foot thick easy. I mean,
Sure, that would be the Sasquatch's bedding.
yeah.
Well,
I don't know. I would have probably thought that would be a pretty cool place to hang out if I was like that.
if you were a
Absolutely.
Sasquatch,
Yeah.
I'm like you're thinking,
Nothing
it must
better.
be.
Yeah.
I mean, did it end there, or was it like you kind of saw the stench and the footprint and an eerie feeling in a silent forest?
It hasn't ended since I seen that. It's
just been on your mind.
yeah.
It's-
Oh yeah. I think about it quite regularly.
Well, and the thing, the peculiar thing of a Sasquatch, and I'm sure some great hunters have embarked on journeys to identify this potential species, but you have to consider, and a lot of people, not everybody realizes if a Sasquatch is real, we're going to play with that idea here for a minute. It would smell you 3 or 4 miles away.
Hypothetically. We don't know about its capability.
You'd have to know it's an apex predator in the forest. That's why it's there that long.
Not-
That's why
not necessarily.
Well, here's
It's not
something that
necessarily a predator.
now that I think about it, and since you put it that way, I don't know why I just now thought.
I mean,
of
if it's
it,
8 feet tall, it's got to
we-
eat something.
we were
You think
coming
it's,
out of the forest, we were
but if
headed
it's a
towards the
hominid-
highway. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I think maybe we had that maybe trapped in that area, like it was trying to get around us, so it wouldn't have to travel out onto the highway.
Sure.
Because I mean, we were probably about
I don't
maybe
think
300
a
yards
Sasquatch
off the
has
highway.
any interest in human population or highways
I-
whatsoever.
No, he wants to stay
Obviously
away.
not.
And when you're talking about, I mean, how many millions, hundreds of millions of square miles of forestry, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
And how at any given time, if it would clearly have to be nomadic in nature, it's not setting up an Ewok village.
At least reclusive,
No,
if not
do you
nomadic.
think
Right.
it migrates?
I would think it would have to be relatively sort of migratory, just to follow the food cycles and the food patterns of the forest, because you don't always.
I think you're imagining it hunting. I'm not.
I
seeing
do.
I'm not
Okay.
seeing
I
it
think it would be
hunting.
more territorial.
You
I'm
don't
not
see it
seeing
hunting.
I'm seeing a territorial animal.
So when you don't see it hunting, what do you speculate is its food source?
Mostly grubs and fruits and vegetables that it finds.
Not a meat eater, or like
Maybe
it's,
an opportunistic meat hunter. If
Yeah,
it finds a dead kill or something like that, it might partake.
Could be an
But I think
omnivore.
most omnivorous, like a bear.
Yeah, eats anything.
Like a bear.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I like to apply this predatory sort of disposition to the Sasquatch when I consider it. Like I do think of it like it's taking down elk and savagely bringing them back to its people and ripping it up.
I guess
and
maybe, but I
cooking
don't-
it over a fire. Do you think Sasquatches know how to make fire?
I think they would
No,
probably
they would have
be-
found that, right?
I think they would probably eat fish, maybe some small birds, but I don't
Sure.
think like maybe,
Not major
no.
meat eaters.
No.
Mostly
you-
a scavenger, an opportunistic omnivore.
You know why that
Yeah.
is?
Like a bear.
Yeah.
Being a meat eater is not an efficient methodology of food
Well,
supply.
you think
It really isn't.
If that was a really important part of your diet, I'm not saying a Sasquatch can't kick ass, but even if it got hurt,
Right.
it would probably starve to death if it got hurt.
Yeah. If it depended on hunting, having to kill to eat. Yeah. No,
So I
it's
think-
so risky to
I
be
think-
Do
strictly
you see
protein.
Sasquatches as loners or as having a single mate, or do you speculate they
Small tribal or
Small
clan.
Close clans,
Clan.
family groups, maybe 5 to 10.
5 to 10,
Yeah.
12 if you've got an aging
And-
grandmother with you or
And
something?
there might be two that sleep here, and 3 miles there's another one. that
Purely
sleeps there.
hypothetical here.
I don't
but
think
yeah.
they
Yeah,
sleep.
no,
in
yeah,
the-
we have to think abstractly on this.
I don't see a loner.
I want to if we're gonna analyze a Sasquatch. I
All
want to know what
hominids.
makes
Well,
them
let's
tick,
at least let's at least break it down. Like we can call it a hominid, right?
I think so.
We can say that it probably
bipedal.
belongs to the same family that we do, that chimpanzees do,
Well, they
gorillas do.
also-
We're probably all hominids, yes. So
They
at least
have that.
there's that. Well, there is no example I can think of in nature of a solitary hominid. They all rely on group living. And just living in at least a family-sized group, if not a little bit bigger, into like a clan.
Yeah,
So these, I don't see them being any different.
yeah, not like a wolverine, a solitary creature.
I don't think there's one
Unless-
example of a solitary hominid.
unless it comes to like mating or something. Yeah, as far as like, as the.
So Sasquatch is a family man.
Well, what about
More
that?
than likely.
What about the alien aspect of it too? Though a lot of people think they might be extraterrestrial. So now we're talking
How'd they get here?
Chewbacca.
How'd they get here?
Chewbacca.
If they're that smart, then I mean,
Chewbacca drove.
we're never gonna find them.
Well, yeah.
If
There's a fucking Sasquatch hiding out there with a goddamn
makes them-
bowcaster,
that makes
I'm
them,
pissed.
That makes them smarter than us. So
I'm pissed. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
We're never gonna find them.
Well, yeah. See, that's maybe part of it. Maybe
Would you think they have
I'm,
developed
I'm in
tools?
no position to tell you.
they.
You're
Why
wrong.
would they come here though? Why would they come here?
Exactly.
Would
Fuck
it be
this
for the
place.
cuisine? I mean, we're like a restaurant.
They
or-
really dug those shroomies you were digging up.
Yeah. I mean, because the ones that make you smile,
Right.
you're not going to find them out there where I was.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
You have to be very lucky. That, in fact, that's not where they grow at all.
Sometimes I wonder if aliens were observing us, like they would have such, depending on where they zoned in, like right. So
Right.
if you're an alien and like you're like, oh hey look, fuck, new planet, let me peek in there and see what's going on. You could peek in on Sarajevo and people are bombing each other, or you could peek in on America and You unfortunately get the Honey Boo Boo channel, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Yeah. Either way, we're fucked.
Right.
If either one of those things is what we're looking at.
Or you see some guy walking his dog, and he picks the poop up.
Well, just a normal fella.
Like, why is this dog following this tiny animal and picking up its shit?
Well, yeah.
How does that make any sense?
That doesn't look like fun at all.
Like, right? If you're a foreign species trying to like wonder how we operate, it would be so weird. Imagine the Earth, if you will, as like your 400 channels of satellite.
What would they have thought of our first Mars landing? Wasn't that just like a big ball we dropped from space and it bounced?
Yeah.
And I mean, if
was
I was
right?
if I was a Martian, I'd say,
one of the first probes worked like that.
Yeah.
This last one came down on a friggin' space crane.
Okay,
it was crazy.
Let's get back to the ball and say you're a Martian standing there and you see this thing bouncing across the surface, and you're like, "Hey, aliens are here, but they don't know how to land very fucking good. I don't think we got much to worry about."
It worked. It worked.
Look at these weird fuckers.
Fucking land.
It was goofy as shit, but it worked.
I don't think there's a whole lot to worry about.
No, and I don't. I wonder if a species has reached us. I, for the most part, would perceive it as being benevolent. I don't always think that if you continue as a species with warlike tendencies, I don't feel that you would reach that total level of interstellar travel.
Stephen Hawking would disagree with you.
Ask
Really?
yourself
So
this question.
tell me why.
If an alien landed in your backyard and he was just a little scrawny guy, would you jack his ship?
No, I'm not. No, I'm
You
not.
know, you'd make him show you how to fly it first.
I'm not.
I would.
I'm not.
I'd be like, that's
I'd want to
just
get in
mine.
there.
Someone would.
It would happen. I'd want to be like, bro, take me with you. Like, let's. Am I gonna die up there? What's going on? There's a lot of. I'd have trust issues getting on there. Yeah, everyone likes to think, oh yeah, let me just jump in there and go. You're gonna get into deep space and your fucking body's gonna melt. Like you're not melt literally, but your bone density, you can't take it. Like if you get in there without your suit and.
Well, you're talking about technology that is
Artificial
beyond our
gravity.
understanding.
Yeah, no, of course.
Perhaps you have artificial gravity aboard this
and
spacecraft
think
that's going to be
about it,
just
they
as though
could-
we're sitting here. We're just
they
happen to
could
be aboard a spacecraft.
Have these little microscopic black holes in their floor panels. I mean, it would be just like
there you go.
And if they got too hard to handle, they just push them out.
I would want assurances. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you're only.
Assurances,
I'll tell you,
he
him
says.
landing in the
He
backyard
wants assurances.
would
He's
be about
making
as
demands.
much assurance as I need.
This
'cause
fucking guy.
I know it didn't get.
It's not
built
enough
here.
that the aliens should come down and say hi. Jonah
In my
wants to make
backyard.
demands on
No,
them.
it's like, bro,
I want
but-
assurances, he says.
And most
Sign
humans
this
don't
waiver.
have a butthole in their
Sign
forehead.
Maybe I'm wrong, but in a way, coming back to the development of technology, maybe I caught myself in a trap there. Some people say the industry of war fuels technology.
Yes, it does.
But in the absence of those great wars, we have funded NASA and developed technology without having to be warmongering. I don't know enough about how the parallel of information between NASA and our military. I would have to imagine it's pretty.
I'm sure it
it's
runs
pretty
pretty deep.
significant.
How much was developed somewhere else and then given to NASA to implement?
Vice versa.
Either way.
I like to think the greatest minds are on the scientific side, not the military side, and they're developing this technology that is then being manipulated by the warlike tendencies of humankind.
You wanted me to tell
fuel,
you who the greatest scientific minds are for? The people who pay the most.
Yep.
And that'd be
That's
your
the truth of it.
military.
Yep.
And that'd be your
Because
military.
I mean, without the money,
Sad but true.
you can't play.
Sad, but
You
true.
can't play with all your little science shit if you don't have the money.
Yep.
So, is that why you say Hawking disagrees? Coming back to that.
Hawking disagrees. I think for the biggest reason is comes down to a question of resources. Universally, there are two things that exist on Earth that we have not found anywhere else. Anywhere else in the entire universe. You know what those two things are?
Gold and water?
protein and chlorophyll.
Oh,
Chlorophyll from the plants.
And protein from the animals.
Interesting. Okay.
If those are so scarce that we've looked everywhere, right? We're like, the one thing we want to find really is life somewhere else. We've not seen any of it.
And according to
we've seen no chlorophyll and no protein.
And those are necessary.
The Earth is jam-packed with chlorophyll and protein.
We got a pretty big area to look at, though, you know.
Well, right. I'm not saying we won't find it, but it's at least scarce. At least scarce.
I think you're going to find it on Mars. I really do.
I'm not opposed to that idea whatsoever.
I really do.
But Earth is covered in it. Freaking covered in protein and chlorophyll.
And within our realm of observational skills, we have yet to identify a planet. Nothing.
Anything.
To our levels or at all?
Protein and chlorophyll indicates life. If we've found life anywhere else, then
it's been found, which we haven't. As of yet.
It's nowhere.
No.
And
not yet. And I'm not saying it's not there. I'm saying we haven't found it. So it's at least scarce. It's at least scarce.
Be, the building blocks for that.
Absolutely. Yes.
And space rocks and stuff like that. What is it? Amino acids?
Basic amino acids and, the precursors for life. Yeah. Well, I could go into it. I don't have my Google machine in front of me.
No, in the idea that war fuels technology, are we not limiting that application because of our own human confines and understanding it as the way we look at it? Are you suggesting that if there was world peace, would technology production stagnate?
It very well might.
It might.
I don't think so. I think technology has to move forward. Because it's an entity of its own.
It is.
Some would argue, Turdman, that technology and the internet right now that was the actual next evolutionary leap. That a lot of people make that.
I am one that will argue that.
No, a lot of people.
I am one that will argue that.
I can't say that. I would not give it that.
Because you are ahead of or behind, however you want to look at it, that evolutionary curve. When the evolutionary curve begins and that layer unfolds, those caught outside of it are what's left over. That's what's done. That's the last model, right? Rob, I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, in any case, it doesn't have to be this
right.
one. In any case, at any time that there's a genetic leap forward, or just an evolutionary leap forward, there's going to be an inside and an outside to that, and the outside wouldn't recognize what they're seeing.
Well,
nor would the inside for that.
I'm going to tell you where your evolutionary advancements come from is deformities.
Yes, genetic ones do come from
genetic evolutionary enhancements, and that's where you've got to expand your thinking just a little bit. In that
this is not genetic.
Evolution is not merely genetic anymore; it is becoming biotechnological.
Until this point, it has been.
Well, look for
until
something
this point
outside the norm. Look for something that doesn't fit in, and then ask yourself, why doesn't it fit in here? Well, there's a reason it's got to fit somewhere else. Or you might have to make something for it to fit.
Right. It seems to be creating its own niche.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Yeah. Well, and
it's defining itself.
Oftentimes, when change is occurring, right, when that evolution is occurring, nobody admits, or I won't say nobody, but fewer people are willing to admit and identify it's occurring now within my presence than they are willing to look back and be like, oh yeah, that happened.
It's really hard to recognize it when your face is in it like this. You even from a person who recognizes the possibility that it might be happening, we still can't define what it will become or what it is even at this point. It's just something right now that's very weird.
And some folks don't even want to voice that because they don't want to be told they were wrong 10 years down the road.
Exactly. And
I don't fear that. I have no fucking problem whatsoever.
Here's the way all that works is it can kind of like go, okay, like a lot of people say invention is a byproduct of necessity.
Right.
Okay?
Necessity breeds invention.
Okay, I believe that evolution kind of goes on that same track.
Definitely.
But our bodies evolve and our minds and everything about us evolves when it needs to.
Right. Random mutations would happen genetically, but only the ones that need to be there in order for the species to keep going would stick around to be bred into the next next generation.
It's only going to keep the strongest traits.
Right.
It's
only he's exactly right in saying, in the long run, what's needed will become a part of the species.
It will come about on its own.
It'll come about on its own.
Yeah.
And
yes.
The fact that
biologically speaking,
our technological leaps as they are now, because we have not blended the two, we could axe that technological leap, and all of a sudden, this quote evolution that we like to claim is ended.
Cease to be.
It ceased to be.
If we pulled the plug on technology, yes.
If that was a way, like if you could unplug the internet,
right?
It's a ridiculous concept, but it's not outside the realm of possibility.
No.
We know
we still have that control over.
Well, we know for sure. If at any point our planet became subject to more intense solar storms, which already is happening in some areas, but if we were to become under in California, when they come under like solar storms, they'll notice it. It fucks with cell phone signal, all of that,
right?
And but if we were subject to more solar storms, we could have an intense enough one that could wipe out like the global power system.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Right now, our grid is not capable
Yes.
of withstanding a massive solar storm.
It is not designed
that would
to
end
handle
the internet.
Like a coronal mass ejection,
right?
That would hit the planet, and it could not only would it wipe out our power grid. It would take out of a great deal of the atmosphere as well. And coronal mass ejections could completely.
What's really scary is that
quickly,
if that happened,
too, I think
absolutely it would. Yes.
If that happened, it's not necessarily going to happen globally. Shielding? That could happen in a targeted area, right? Yeah. Like that could happen just in America and not affect China or
more
Russia.
Likely that something like that would have to be man-made.
But see, nowadays they detect that and they shut down certain things.
Yeah.
When that's
but a big
going
enough
on.
one.
No, they do, but it is
a big enough one.
Factually known that infrastructurally we are not prepared for it.
Oh,
no, not even close.
No, I mean
not even close.
There's nothing you can do if it's going to fry the power grid. It's going to fry the power grid.
Right.
And I would say before the power grid would be back up and running, in some areas I would give it a year or two, and some I'd give it 30.
Absolutely.
It would be 2 to 30 years.
Yes.
I feel like a year or two.
Something big enough to take it out?
That feels really optimistic, man.
He says in some places.
In America, motherfuckers, it takes them weeks to fix a goddamn pothole on our street.
High-value places.
Well, yeah, but see, listen.
Yeah.
You take something that we like away from us.
And we'll find a way.
We'll deal with that pothole.
We'll find a way.
We'll cuss at it every time we go out,
right.
and we'll deal with it.
But if you take Starbucks away.
Yeah, you go ahead and take the NFL away or.
Yeah.
We'll
figure it out.
Oh, if that shit happened during football season, dude, forget about it.
I mean, there's certain things that we just don't tolerate.
No. And those are inconveniences and discomfort.
And if you think about it, it's kind of dumb. I mean,
Jonah's willing to put demands on aliens who came to his backyard. What's he going to do when he can't tune in his dolphins?
Yeah. I mean, just say for all of a sudden,
Well, if the aliens show up on football Sunday, they can go fuck themselves.
They can fuck themselves.
Yeah.
I get motherfuckers. I get 16 weeks a year to watch my shitty ass team lose.
Well, you don't think they can stream your football game from the spaceship?
Oh, if they
about
can,
the Dolphins
bro,
fan?
that'd be on my list of demands.
Right? Yeah.
Bro, you got to be able to
fair.
stream the game up there as I'm watching.
Hey, if
Earth.
you're gonna come pick me up, you first realize, son, this is America.
Listen, aliens, if you come to pick me up and you cannot bring me into orbit and globally map my game over the Earth in a 3D projection, fuck you. I'm not going for the ride.
#America.
I want to sit in the middle of the field in a holodeck and have the game played around.
That's what we need is a damn holodeck.
Well, listen, pretty soon, and it's already happening now. You can, if you have a good enough pair of the 3D goggles, they're not the VR goggles. Yeah. Why I couldn't fucking think of that word right there. I was brain farting.
You're not very bright.
I'm not. I'm just here to be a good radio voice, and you guys bring the intelligence. But you can already get those and put those on with your phone, and you can sit courtside during a game.
Sure can.
That's crazy. Like you can, and I yeah. That's when we say
you put them on during a boxing match.
Yeah.
Somebody could punch you in the face and out of reality.
Well, it can, depending on how intense the experience is. It could simulate that feeling, like that getting punched in the brain feeling. But no, mostly, in its simplest form, people have what's called a 360 degree camera, right?
Yep.
And you put these on, and you can turn 360 degrees, and you can see where their camera is. But in a more enhanced form, of course, and this is, a lot of people know this, but you can now put those on, watch a football game, watch a basketball game. No, it's nobody's sweating and bleeding on you, and you don't feel like the physical impacts, but you get the sensation. There is a moment, and I've tried these, and it's fun and it's awesome, but there is always a moment of your brain has to remind itself that what you are experiencing when you have that VR on is just that. Because like I did this one where you sit in a wheelchair and they escort you down this insane asylum, and it's really scary, and you can look around and see like an IV in your arm, and it's very detailed and horrific. And
you start to feel your brain slipping into that reality.
It is so easy.
Yep.
And
those are the first pangs of that reality that is indecipherable from this one.
Even if for a moment, even if that moment lasts the snap of a fingers,
sure,
that was
it's
a snap
still
of a fingers in which your brain had to work extra to remind you, you are not in a physical reality.
This isn't real.
But it's so there.
It had to actually
the feeling, my heart pumped.
Sure.
It got my adrenaline going, and I was just sitting in a chair. I wasn't even in like an intense one where I was moving or running anywhere. I just sat in a chair and put it on and went for the ride.
Think about what that's going to be like in 5 years.
Right. I think that in 10 years, in the 2020s, I certainly perceive virtual reality sports where people are wearing headsets and gear, and they're competing in maybe like a Call of Duty like scenario, or like a war game like scenario that people can watch, but every avatar in the game would be someone physically doing all those movements, but it was just the 3D projected image of that person.
Sure.
I see that happening
and
in the 2020s.
More than that.
And a lot more.
Stuff you haven't even thought of yet.
No. If I fucking thought of it, I can rest assured somebody far more intelligent than me is already working towards something better.
No doubt.
It's hard to have a new idea.
It's very hard to have a new idea.
Well, yes and no. It's hard to have a new idea that will alter the world.
A truly novel idea.
I don't think it's hard to have a new idea that can affect the people in your immediate reality. New ideas don't have to be world-changing. New ideas can just affect the 4 or 5 or 600 people who are sort of close in that network.
A novel idea, to me, it doesn't even necessarily have to affect anything, just that it's so novel. It's new. It's not something that's been scratched at yet. Those are becoming rarer.
No, now that we have instant global communication, we have less and less scenarios of truly unique, inherently never been said before. It reminds me of Carlin when he said, "Hey, everybody, sit down while I go back here. I'm going to stick this hot fire poker right up my ass." And he's just like, I guarantee you've never heard anybody say those words.
He had an entire speech.
An entire speech.
That was a series of words he strung together that he can say, I promise no one had ever written that before. No one's ever said that before. And I'm proud of that.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a big reason why I certainly recognize Carlin as one of the all-time greats.
To me, he is the...
Sure. You get into those conversations, and it's like with any of the greats at any top of the game thing, when you start to get those top 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm not going to fight hard to change those names around. No, exactly. If one person was over here saying Richard Pryor was the greatest and you were saying Carlin was the greatest, I'd be like, man, I side with Carlin here, but there's no wrong answer there.
There's not. They were both brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant.
I think that Richard Pryor and George Carlin were both phenomenal comedians, but they had different styles.
Very much
completely.
So. Very much
for
so.
Sure.
I think you have to distinguish that.
For sure.
and give it to them in their own right that they were both at their type of comedy.
Right.
George Carlin wasn't a big swearer.
No, yeah,
Not
fuck
really.
yeah, he
when,
was.
Well, when he did
like
it,
Richard
it
Pryor.
Not
popped.
foul mouth like Pryor.
When he did it, it popped because
But
it was
yeah.
more of a
It was like, what the
an
fuck?
emphasis. Whereas Pryor would just rattle off profanity he would just liberally sprinkle it about how he's speaking.
Yeah.
Neither one of those is better than the other. It's just how they got down.
It went into his sentence structure.
Right.
What, and with Pryor and Carlin and a lot of these greats, what was the 80s like the first renaissance of stand-up comedy? Like, was that like the major kind of leap forward? I know, and and I ask you this, Turdman, because where was comedy at in like the early 70s?
Well, you have
Just on whatever was on the
Well, you can go all the way
Tonight
back
Show,
to
or?
like Bob Hope.
I'm not saying they didn't exist.
Don Rickles.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they didn't exist. But when you think of like a comedy special, the way like a Richard Pryor, an Eddie Murphy, a Sam Kinison, a George Carlin in the 80s, those to me seem like, and Andrew Dice Clay, those specials from the 80s.
Big leaps forward.
Major leaps forward. Nobody talks
yeah.
about the specials from the 70s. Now, you want to talk 70s music? Million great examples.
Right. Big
70s
leaps forward in
movies.
music.
70s movies.
Sure.
Major great examples.
Yeah.
70s comedy. What, the late 70s Saturday Night Live,
that
maybe?
They didn't exist, but it didn't really, like, the 80s, they
Martin
really
and Lewis,
started
you had
getting,
Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin, and you go back to some comedy, like even the like old comedies, I still enjoy to this day, like Laurel and Hardy.
No idea who that is.
What you never heard
I'm
of
drawing
Laurel
a
and Hardy?
blank.
Laurel
Laurel and Hardy.
Laurel
I've
and
heard
Hardy.
of that.
Nope, I haven't.
The one skinny guy, they both wear the derby, the short fat guy,
Dude, I just don't know who they
Ollie.
are.
So like an Abbott and Costello ripoff, or were they
Well,
the ripoff?
no, actually Abbott and Costello, I would say, would be the ones that were ripped off them guys.
Okay.
Because Laurel and Hardy, they even had their own cartoon. You never heard of Laurel and Hardy? Come on, give me
No,
a
dude,
break.
fuck. I'm
Heard
35. I was
of
born in
them.
81. I've never heard of them. But that's what I'm getting at is looking at the 70s. I think there's a lot of great representations of other entertainment mediums
If you
that I
seen a
adore.
picture of them, you know who they were.
But comedy, I feel like it really got its legs in the 80s. That's not to say that
Never heard of Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Okay.
That's not to say that there wasn't a movement that helped it get there, but that was what launched it forward.
Yeah.
Right? That was it.
There's
you
a
can go
big
way back.
leap forward in at least stand-up comedy.
That's what I mean. Stand-up comedy. I'm not talking comedy in movies or film.
It changed.
But stand-up.
It changed drastically. Like
Because
me,
conservatism was fucking
well,
done.
you know what? I this is my
Also
opinion. I
cocaine.
probably told
And
you
cocaine.
this before, but what do you think? What do you think
the cocaine era
contributed-
followed by the LSD era.
contributed to such a cultural change from, say, Ward and Jude Cleaver,
Right.
okay, to help me out here.
What, Al
The
Bundy?
Bundys?
The
Yeah,
Bundys?
there you go. You know what? I think what
Street
the,
drugs?
What the catalyst
Honestly,
was.
I drugs
Street
and
Birth
drugs.
control
awareness.
pill.
What is it?
Birth control pill.
Why do you think that?
Think about it. When did
I-
it come out?
I am thinking about it. I'm
There-
asking you to tell me.
I'm
Well,
guessing mid-70s.
No, it came out just
I mean, I don't know.
a couple years before the hippies.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Early 60s.
Oh, all right.
Early 60s.
So sex became more of a, at least
well, let's
less
put it this
dangerous
way.
thing to do in terms of getting
Yeah.
pregnant.
This
this
1960, real quick here. I looked it up real quick.
Sure.
1960 is when the first oral
Right.
contraceptive was approved
So-
by the U.S. Food and Drug
So it
Administration.
probably
So,
wasn't
10
widely
years later, the
distributed.
bras were getting ripped off and burned.
Right.
great.
Good.
We needed that. God,
Yes.
I love women's rights.
Yes.
They needed that. And
I mean, to me, it is one of the most significant influences that changed our culture from
Agreed.
that point on.
Agreed.
Because before that,
That's an excellent way of looking at
Before
exactly
that-
what went down. This was a cascade of change
oh yeah,
that really
yeah.
started, and you could be right on the money.
Well,
Okay, but listen-
even the music changed.
real quick,
Even the music
Sure.
changed.
Well,
The
yeah.
dress, the way people carried themselves,
Well, sex
how
is
they
so-
acted socially.
Yeah, I mean, it's
do you know? And lots of things preceded that moment, but I want to also remark on something else that fueled the totality of that movement. And my friends, that was Bike Day, and Bike Day was when Albert Hoffman created LSD, and that was in 1943.
Now you start
17 years
these
prior.
things.
Yep, 17 years prior to the dawn of birth control, people were being introduced to LSD, which was truly expanding their mind into new ways of thinking. It wasn't until the Nixon administration that it was actually illegal. So there was a time where you could legally imbibe LSD.
Yep.
And you trigger that LSD movement is triggered with also during this time education was significantly cheaper, so women had more opportunities to seek higher learning. If you're seeking higher learning, you don't want to have kids as much. You're thinking in new wavelengths. People were beginning to think in new wavelengths socially at that time. We were just starting to break ourselves away.
Cast a new mold.
Yes.
Well, here's the way society expected a woman to get married,
Right.
have kids, stay at home.
Yep.
Okay, when they got that birth control pill, that changed
Now they have options.
the whole perspective.
Now they have options.
I mean, it was...
No, we had plenty of options, but I feel like
it empowered
now
women.
they did.
It empowered
yeah,
women.
women
That's what I mean. Yeah, women did. Yeah, and now they do, and they still do. And it was you start to bridge those gaps. I really believe that Bike Day, women's rights, civil rights. This is when we began to break ourselves away from the mold as created by a lot of people would credit one Mr. Edward Bernays. For those that who do not know who Bernays is. Edward Bernays is considered by many to be the grandfather of mass psychology.
Oh, that's right.
Of mass psychology, mass control, political leaders in the 30s and 40s, and maybe even dating into the 20s, were using him. This is the nephew of Sigmund Freud in the late 20s, 30s, and 40s. He is who sort of started implanting the concepts of mass population control, mainstream media control. He really kind of helped, in some ways, fuel propaganda, and it's.
Sure.
These aren't conspiracies. It's well documented. His study and his documentation of mass psychology. Again, this is just real shit that happened.
Yeah.
Political leaders went to this guy and said, "Look,
Our advanced understanding of sociology had to come from somewhere.
Yes, and they said we need ways to placate the populace.
Sure.
And they wanted people with ideas. They went, who are the smart motherfuckers in this world?
Let's put fluoride in the water.
Right. Or whatever it may have been. And so Bernays was really the one. And I don't think it was until birth control and LSD that the control and the dictate of Bernays maybe started to crack a little.
To break it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not, you can't 100% attribute such a paradigm-altering shift to just one or two things. But are those two things absolutely major players in our transcending all of those previously observed barriers of society? Then, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. In retrospect, I wasn't even born until 1981, but I can look back on that in 2016 and say, yeah, that's most certainly two humongous catalysts in our change.
It seemed like the 60s. Now, when that birth control pill came out,
sure,
it was just a few years after that people really started throwing off just more than their sexual inhibitions.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to transcend
and you've seen
everything.
You've seen a lot more protests.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the catalyst that empowered these people more. I kind of think it was men and women,
right,
to actually take their protests and their voices a step further.
Yes.
Than in the 60s. And I mean, look at how that back then when you protested, a lot of times it wound up in riots in the 60s.
Oh yeah. I
mean, I remember
civil rights,
going
women's
to
rights,
school
all that stuff.
And watching National Guardsmen escort buses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they were integrating.
Right.
You know, and I couldn't understand what the big deal was at the time. You know, I mean, because if you think about it, little kids are the most honest people. They're the most cruel.
They can be.
But at the same time,
they're straightforward.
They're going to get along a lot better than adults do.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
because they're not taught yet to be.
Well, yeah,
you're different from me, so I hate you.
You have to show them.
Yeah, they have to be shown racism. They have to be shown terrible things. If they're gonna be racist, then they have to be shown racism. Yeah. No one's born a fucking racist.
No.
No one's born hating someone because they're different than them.
It's certain influential moments in people's lives that dictate what type of person they're going to be.
Yes.
And then also at the same time, it has a lot to do with your dedication and your steadfastness to, you know, move forward in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, because child rearing now is so different.
I bet.
I mean, you know, 100 years ago, if you didn't knock your old lady and your kids around, somebody thought something was wrong with you.
Right. You must be some kind of poof.
You know.
And that is so fucking strange to me.
I remember in the early 70s walking home from the skating ring on a Friday night, and I'd pass these bars out in Seattle, White Center, and there'd be a cop sitting in there drinking with his uniform on.
Sure.
Commonplace.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
It was no big deal.
You don't look twice at that.
And another link to this entire movement.
It's not a bad thing.
Was of course civil rights. After birth control, LSD, civil rights. Yeah. Now, Turdman actually has direct. I mean, he was there, and people forget, and I don't want to apply any age group. It's not just millennials. It's not just Gen X or whatever. But I know, like, you know, Rub and I, we weren't alive when shit was segregated. It's something you learn about in schools, but to really sit and think and wrap your head around the idea that we are still generationally directly attached to people who grew up where, you know, you couldn't ride on a bus with people of a certain color, or you couldn't go to school with people of a certain color. And in the beginning of your formative years, that was the norm, right? Yeah. So you went to school for a chunk of your life.
Well, they used to have these, I mean, older people will know that the hippie lingo is called the sit-ins. You know, we're a form of protest. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were definitely peaceful protests, but I'm telling you.
Do you remember them when you were a kid?
I watched these hippies get their asses kicked on TV almost nightly.
Jesus. The same kind of, quote, hippies that maybe are getting their asses kicked here in North Dakota with the DAPL. You know, it's weird. The same hippies who got their asses kicked. Some of them, maybe it's. I'm not saying like the DAPL is like civil rights. It's weird, but I want to focus on the civil rights. Just I just see protesters getting their ass kicked a lot. Even going back to Occupy Wall Street, there's the image I always think of, like the girl. It could have been my daughter, 18, sitting peacefully in arm, and that fucking cop came up and just like point blank range. And this was out in New York, you know, just hosed all of them. And I was just like, oh my fucking God, you're doing that to a little girl on her knees?
That's
like, what the fuck?
That's not what I see.
What did you see?
I seen them getting clubbed, beat with clubs.
And this
dragged off by their hair.
This was people of all color. White people, black people,
hippies,
or was it
hippies? You know, just hippies.
It's what people call hippies.
Protesters.
And when people called them hippies, it was a disdainful term, right?
Yeah, it was. Like, dirty hippie.
And yet these were people willingly putting their bodies in the line for somebody else's right.
Get the camera, hide the cat.
You know,
where's the kids?
And that's just sort of sad to me, man. Why do hippies get such a bad rap? Is it because of the marijuana propaganda movement in the 30s and 40s?
That, and
is it just because they wanted to change the established line of thinking?
It was a bucking of society's norm. They didn't want
of the pushback.
They didn't want to conform to society as.
So you're
you had the communes. Of course, then again, you had people like Manson come out of that era too.
No, and that well, they like to attach those horror stories and put those mainstream to create the hysteria.
Yeah,
but so you're a kid.
That had a lot to do with the perception of hippies.
Where did you see people get their asses beaten sit-ins?
On TV.
Okay, so it never live.
Well,
though.
yeah,
like when you lived in Washington, you never actually saw it physically happen, or just on the news.
It was Vietnam. It was civil rights. It was hippies, and everybody was getting their ass kicked by the cops.
And every time there was a movement for change, everybody who was speaking for the change is a fucking hippie.
Yeah.
Right?
Since then, yeah.
Since then. Well, they didn't have they didn't have a term for it. The term used to be revolutionary. When Americans fucking, broke away, I mean, they were being hippies.
I think they were just claiming their own identity.
Okay.
Sounds pretty hippie to me.
In a way, right? George Washington was fucking hippie. I mean, he was a slave owner. That's shitty, but he was a hippie.
Deal. There was very few identities as far as cultural aspects go. Like you said, we were Ward Cleaver.
Mm-hmm.
Either that or we were the cowboy,
Yeah.
But they all had the same morality barometer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Extremely similar cookie cutter type people.
I love that term, the morality barometer.
Yeah.
Why aren't we all built with the same one?
That would be terrible.
If it was the just and virtuous one that we need.
What's just and virtuous today becomes tomorrow's locked in a cage.
I know. Then I'm dictating. I know.
We have to evolve. We have to change. We have to be open. As maybe standoffish as your parents were to certain things that you believed in, you're going to be standoffish, and I promise you, against certain things that your children believe in.
How dare you?
Yeah.
I will never.
I promise you will.
No, I know. You're right.
Certain things, maybe not everything. Maybe you'll be a little bit cooler dad.
No, I've already done it. My daughter asked me if she could shave a design into the bottom of the back of her head underneath her hair. She's 8, and I was like, fuck no, you can't. I'll fucking put you through a wall if you ever ask me that again.
Yeah.
No, I didn't say all those things, but I was definitely against that idea.
You were taken back by it.
I was like, what are you talking about? Why would you want to do that?
Every generation has this struggle.
Now,
every single fucking one.
Turdman, you as a kid remember the first day of desegregated schools in your city, right?
Seattle, yeah.
How did that go down to how you remember it? And how old were you?
Well, it wasn't so bad in Seattle.
Because you told me this story, and it's so fucking fascinating. Not everybody gets to hear this directly.
But
listen, real quick, guys, not everybody gets to hear directly.
Right.
And I'm not saying he was there on the front lines of the Civil War movement, but he was going to the Civil Rights movement. But he witnessed when they integrated it, and I want to hear that perspective. And
I don't know if anybody out there really remembers when they shot McGovern. He was presidential candidate that was totally for segregation.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
McGovern.
Who shot McGovern?
Well, I can't remember who shot McGovern, but he got shot because he was one that was all for segregation.
Sure.
George McGovern, and he was a presidential candidate in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he did not care for
I remember
mixing of the races.
He was
10 years before I was born.
He did not want
it's
that.
Not that long ago.
Now, I remember seeing, like even in my streets, National Guard members.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this was going on right where I was, but they were there in case it did. And a lot of other areas. I'll tell you where it was really bad was in California and Oakland. Where you got escorted on and off the bus by National Guardmen standing there with their weapons.
So when segregation ended and they commingled,
and that happened in Oakland, I would figure they
had to
South
have
would be so much worse.
Well, it was, but see, you talking about a good over half the country.
Just a general fear of violence. So as segregation was ended and they were integrating black people, just general at that time, into white schools, and they were commingling the schools.
Well, actually, it was both ways. I mean,
in both ways. In some situations, there was had to be police escorts to ensure safety for everyone.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
In that specific
we have a long way to go, but
we
come a long way.
And we have a long way to go. And when I think about these stories and I hear someone like Turdman reflect on it, the next 4 years scare me. We're not going to go political here, but we are a progressive-minded people, and at the Good Talk podcast, we just want people to apply new thinking to old problems, be open to new ideas, and be willing to. Sometimes, for better or worse, you got to be willing to embrace change, right? Isn't that a part of compromise?
Yeah. Well, every day you change, whether you see it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, you yourself have probably felt one way, felt adamantly about something, and then it was presented to you in a different light, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, you have to.
Several things. And I'm
lots of things.
You know, you have
many times.
It's the epiphany, you know.
Yes.
That comes around, you know.
I fucking love
a
that
realization.
word. I fucking love that word.
It is that epiphany, and it is that realization that I have to be willing to embrace my flaws in order to accept change.
That's how we grow.
In order to understand that nothing is certain.
Nothing is certain.
Well, here's
because
the deal.
We all just have to wonder a little bit
once you
about
realize
what this ride is.
An epiphany is a great
and
thing.
it is just that.
A ride.
You know, an awakening.
Yeah.
Is what I look at an epiphany as.
That epiphany is one of my favorite concepts.
You know, and what you said about a person having to have the realization can't get to an epiphany without that realization.
Nope.
Realization precedes epiphany.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because realization, once applied to knowledge gained in your experience, becomes epiphany.
Well, you could say one is the same, but I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. It's one is a progression into the next.
Realizing, realizing, and then focusing on that realization, and then comes the epiphany.
And bringing that into your experience, into your life. That's epiphany.
Why do you think some people have these weird roadblocks preventing them from epiphany? And what designates an epiphany? Is it a life change? Is it just a moment when you knew you were wrong? Is it an altering of your perception and how you apply that to your everyday life?
That's the one.
Here's the thing. I think people put their roadblocks up there by imposing stigmas on their way of thinking.
Yes.
Precepts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Programming.
Yeah.
Yes. Unwillingness for change.
Yes.
Don't want to accept new information.
Yes.
And half the time when you're trying to get them to see something in a new light, they're not hearing you.
No.
All they're hearing is somebody who's got a different opinion, or they might even feel that they're under attack.
Yep. More often than not,
You know?
they feel like they're being attacked.
Yeah.
And they will respond the same way as though you were attacking them physically. They're ready for a fight.
Yeah, the defenses go up quick.
They will respond to a new idea in the same way that they would respond to someone attacking them physically.
Well, and I really...
And that's science. That's been shown.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, it is scientific.
The same endorphins are produced in the brain when someone who's set in a way that is confronted with a new idea. The same things happen inside the brain as though they're being attacked physically. It's the same thing.
And again, so that's like... I love the fucking show Inside Out because the way it's a cartoon, but real quick, they represent all the major spiritual emotions of the brain in characterized fashion, and these characters are all defending their position throughout the brain, and that is really what you're getting at. It's like your brain sometimes reacts to new ideas that don't align with you as though it's an invading force. And that is an electrical...
That's science.
Yeah.
That happens.
That is a mechanism in your brain that triggers. Are you losing... Is your mic falling?
We're good.
Okay. And I always like to explore or talk about and what can we do to help these roadblocks be conquered? I want to say we talk a lot about we welcome people who want to think in new ways, and we want to embrace new thinking, and we want to spiral out. How can we take action on that?
Well, you have to.
That is action.
You have to be brave enough to have a battle, an individual battle within yourself.
Yes.
If you can't do that, you ain't going nowhere.
Yes. Agreed 1,000%.
You have to be able to fight with yourself.
That's action, isn't it?
Have that battle.
That is
yourself.
help.
Sure.
That is help.
And you're battling stigmas.
I can't force this. I can't force my way of thinking on anyone else.
No.
I can't expect anyone to tag along with my way of thinking.
I would like for my thinking to help you view your thinking through a different lens, is what I want.
But you can't force that.
No, you can't.
So just...
You have to
exercise
it.
Teach your children. Teach your children that.
Yeah.
Just teach your children that, and then hopefully they'll teach their children.
I guess that's really the best that any of us can hope to do. Posterity. Mindfulness. Empathy.
I can't force it on the current generation. I can hopefully affect the next. I don't have children myself, but.
The children that you interact with,
the ones that I do interact with, I hope that I can, show them something that awakens something within them.
Yourself with somebody.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of a given.
Yeah.
With kids.
And in that regard too, like I wish that I want people to learn from my mistakes as much as they learn from their own.
Sure.
If I can share my errors or the error of my ways, or
I don't want my mistakes to have been in vain.
No, and without that
it's
learning,
not enough just that I've learned from them. I would love for everyone to learn from them as well.
Well, and in that regard, when does pride start to get in the way? When is pride good or bad?
Almost immediately.
It's
is pride good or bad?
Stigmas I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I know it goes both ways easily, but pride seems to be one of those.
Pride's almost more detrimental than it is helpful.
If you had to slice it, like, is it a 70? It's not like a 55-45.
60-40.
65-35.
Pride has its place.
It has its place.
Because it does. You can't completely eliminate the idea of pride.
It's just so strong.
But it's so easily
its will to dominate.
It so easily runs away with itself.
You have to let it affect you in the right way.
Yes. You do.
You know.
And that takes introspection. That takes a person who's willing to like Terry said, have that battle within yourself. Have that conversation with yourself.
And ladies and gentlemen, ultimately we are here to encourage you to have those conversations with yourself here at the Good Talk podcast. Challenge your own way of thinking. Challenge yourself. Challenge us at the Good Talk 5 on Twitter. Challenge your friends, your family, and we're gonna wrap it up there. This has been a very phenomenal episode for me. I want to thank you once again to Terry Allen,
thank you so much,
also known as Turdman, for being here. This has been a great podcast. Please, if you have listened to us, please take 30 seconds and review us on iTunes and share us with your friends and family or anybody that you think might enjoy what we have going on here. It means a lot. We're welcome to interact with you on our Twitter. That's at the Good Talk 5. So hit us up. It's been a good talk.
Good talk.
Good talk.